Hello YouTube, this is Matthew, and today I want to talk about forgiveness. But first off, I need to make a brief digression into the term Christian atheists. So Christian atheism basically is the belief that there is no God, so you're an atheist, but you want to retain, Christianity in some form or fashion, whether that's certain, the moral framework, or you just you feel a part of that collective, that Christian collective. You want to go to church, maybe, or you want to raise your kids within the Christian tradition. You find some value in that, even though you don't believe in the theology. People like Douglas Murray and Slavoj Žižek, two very different people, consider themselves to be Christian atheists. I suspect Jordan Peterson is a Christian atheist, although he would be horrified at the characterization, I believe, on the grounds that, whenever he's asked, does he believe in God, it's always a dodge, but I think he's trying to give off the impression that he does, in fact, believe in God. So, okay. I just don't take him to be, one of those people who actually believes in all the theology. Maybe he does. Maybe he's convinced himself he does. I don't know. But we're not talking about, or Jordan Peterson is not the main crux of this video. I bring up Christian atheism because when you abandon a religious tradition, particularly the one that is dominant in your cultural milieu, you don't abandon it entirely, at least on, say, unconscious grounds. There's still some parts of you that were influenced by that tradition, and no matter how hard you try, you can't completely get away from it. So that's why the term Christian atheism is interesting to me, because I don't like the term when it implies belief. So I would not call myself a Christian atheist because I don't find much value in Christianity, period. There's very few things about Christianity that I particularly like or agree with. Overall, I think it's a pretty detestable religion. But if Christian atheist means an atheist who came from a Christian background, or an atheist who lives in a Christian country, then I'm a Christian atheist. Again, I don't use that term in that way because I think that just confuses people. In the same way that I don't use God in a metaphorical sense. I could easily use God in a metaphorical sense, but I don't, because I think that's just going to confuse people with the bearded man in the sky. People are going to think I'm talking about an anthropomorphic being that created the universe and loves me and is going to punish me if I'm bad after death, or reward me after death if I'm good in this life. And that's something like, so I think when Spinoza talks about God, well, this is my interpretation of Spinoza. This is not agreed upon, but my interpretation of Spinoza is, all right, so he says God is, like, there's one substance in the universe, and that is God. I think he's talking about the universe. In that sense, okay, I believe in God. Or if God just, as Kant says, is consciousness, not consciousness, the conscience. If God is the conscience, then I believe in God. But I just don't find God. I'm not going to use that term because most people don't use it that way. Same with Christian atheist. But as you can probably guess, there's one concept in Christianity, one thread of one perspective in Christianity is something that I still hold on to, and that's this idea of forgiveness. Now, why is that? I mean, first off, obviously what that means does depend on the kind of Christianity you're talking about and the Christians you're talking to. From a very fundamentalist perspective, forgiveness only comes from God, or from believing in God, from believing in Jesus. It comes from a pronouncement of faith. But there's another, it's a radical strand of Christianity, really. There's a strand, I think it's called universal reconciliation. And universal reconciliation argues that everybody is ultimately reconciled with God. Now, what this means, again, varies. It can either mean like your soul is kind of punished for a little while, and then you burn off your sins, and then ultimately you're reconciled with God. Or it's the idea that the human soul, is ultimately pure. No matter what you did in life, no matter who you were in life, there's an inner goodness in you that's always there, and when you die, that inner goodness descends to heaven, is united with the divine. But I might have mentioned this in a previous video. I don't actually remember, and I don't really feel like looking through my archive to see. But forgiveness, I think this idea should be taken, and I think this idea can be justified, even with rational argument. I mean, it's a very, in some ways, almost inhuman idea, because I think many people are sympathetic with retribution. They're sympathetic with getting even, an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. They're sympathetic with if someone wrongs you, then you have the right to punish them in some way, or you have the right to retaliate in kind. So it's like, this idea of what is the phrase? I'm forgetting now. I don't remember, but if a husband has his there was a movie about this, I think, wasn't there? Like a husband's family was killed, and so the husband went off and tracked down the guy who killed him or killed them, and I forget. I'm just having a weird free association moment. But regardless, like, that's in that situation, most people, while they might not legally condone that, they'd be like, yeah, I can understand why the husband would go off and find that killer and kill him because he killed his family, and that's not right. That guy deserves to die because he transgressed against somebody in a way which is just totally unforgivable. You can't do it. You can't do that. I mean, that's fair. I wouldn't recommend killing people. Just piece of advice. But, and this is why, of course, the death penalty in the United States is a huge issue. And this is why I think when you poll the American people, if you believe in polling, most people say, yeah, no, there are certain people they should just be put to death after doing this, that, or the other thing. I don't care. They've lost their no one wants to have a philosophical argument about, yeah, they have true humanity about them. Like, no, like, you shot up a school, all right, you deserve to die. No, that's it. No questions asked. So built into the justice system is that sort of idea of getting even with someone who did something evil. It's like, you did this, all right, you're going to pay with your life, or at the very least, you're going to pay with life in prison or something. We're all about that payment, paying for your sins. But I think the liberating, I think it's liberating to get out of that mindset and practice the art of forgiveness towards everybody at all times. And when I say the art of forgiveness, this is really kind of a mental, a headspace I'm advocating people get into. I'm not saying like there should be no criminal justice system. I'm not saying if there's certain people doing very, very destructive things, they shouldn't be locked up in a mental hospital or in prison. But I can't say that anything is in and of itself, any act is in and of itself unforgivable. I mean, part of that derives from a belief in free will. A lack of belief in free will. Part of that derives from the fact that I view everybody as a product of a victim of circumstance, to quote Billy Joel. And so many of these people who do horrendous crimes, they weren't born defective. They just had a very terrible childhood. They were abused. They were neglected. They were homeless. They learned that aggression, violence, is the way to get through life. And it also comes from the, this is probably going to sound stupid, but the sense of, I guess, connection I might feel with my fellow creatures. And by that I mean, I don't feel distant from, these criminals and dictators and all these evil people that we can, that you can list off. It's not saying I condone their actions. It's not saying that I want to do what they're doing. But I recognize that part of myself, which could be capable of atrocious acts. Again, to go back to Jordan Peterson, he's always talking about, oh, you all are terrible monsters, which is why we need religion, we need tradition, because you would just be a Nazi if you were born in Nazi Germany. Just admit it. You're a defective, miserable creature, and that's why you need to clean your room and all the rest of it, right? I don't think we should spend too much time thinking of ourselves as despicable, miserable monsters, but I recognize my capacity for evil or my capacity to do harm, and I recognize the spark of goodness or the spark of constructiveness even in the worst people. You know, it's this dual nature, I guess, in a sense. This pull towards death, this pull towards love, this pull towards destruction, this pull towards construction. And so, because of me, because I don't feel that distance between myself and, you know, insert bad person here, I can't say that they can't be forgiven. Because human life is just so weird and complicated and convoluted. Nobody really knows what's going on. A lot of us everyone's a victim of circumstance to one degree or another. There are no good or bad people. There are just people, and they're doing things, and certain things are beneficial to themselves or those around them, and other things are destructive to themselves or those around them. But even besides that, like, even if you just don't find any of that convincing, I still go back to the power it gives the forgiver, and the power it can give to the forgiven. Yeah, I think I might have said this is very. I'm sensing I've deja vu. I think I've said some similar things before, probably in my videos related to free will. But what am I trying to say? When you forgive somebody, what you're saying is, I no longer am allowing this act to define me. And I'm no longer allowing this act to define you. Doesn't mean you have to love the person. Doesn't mean you even have to like the person. In certain situations, someone does wrong to you, probably might not like them. You might never like them. You might never love them. That's fine. You can be honest about that. But you don't have to like or love somebody to forgive them. But you can't hold on to resentment. You can't hold on to anger. You can't continue to view them as a monster. You can't continue to view them as evil. Because if someone is a monster, if someone is evil, then you shouldn't forgive them. That doesn't make sense, right? If someone is truly just a despicable being, you know, if their very essence is bad, then it makes sense to hate them, to despise them, to dehumanize them, and to get rid of them. You know, they're a pest at that point. They're a dangerous pest, in the same way that a mosquito who can carry malaria might be a dangerous pest. But they're dangerous at a level exceeding that of a mosquito carrying malaria. But to forgive them, or to forgive them, liberates you. It's truly a act of freedom. And if you show that to the other person, I mean, you don't have to, obviously, but in theory, I would say if you were to literally look at a person dead in the eyes and say, you did this to me, it was painful, it was horrible, I was distraught for weeks and months and years, but I forgive you. I think that could be even powerful to the criminal, to the person who did you wrong, Doesn't have to be a crime. Because that takes away certain. It's basically saying you're sidestepping the master-slave morality thing. So if someone transgresses against you, it's a power game, right? They're trying to dominate you somehow. But you're saying, I'm stepping away from that. You're not my master, but you're not my slave either. We're just two people. We're two equals, basically. We're two equals. I'm free, you're free, and I'm gonna keep on being free. If you show that to people who are doing wrong, I think that could lead to betterment. It could lead the person to decide to lead a different kind of life. I'm not really sure if there's anything else to say about this. I mean, at some level, I could see why someone wouldn't be convinced by my arguments, and my arguments might not be the most profound or the most rigorous. But again, I do go back to the power of forgiveness. It's easy to hold on to anger and resentment and hatred. It's easy to demonize somebody who did you wrong, even someone who did you wrong in a major way. And you're probably going to do that for a little bit. We're not purely rational beings, and so therefore, if someone does you wrong in a major way, you're going to be angry. Probably going to feel that hatred. You're probably going to despise that person for a little while. You're going to have that emotional reaction that's deeper in us than our reason. But you don't have to stay there. That's the thing. And if you do, then I think you're not getting the most out of your time on this earth. So, in my personal life, and when I think about history and politics and whatnot, I try to offer forgiveness across the board. It's a work in progress. Not great at it. That's what I try to do. Because I don't want to be shackled to those negative emotions, and I don't want other people to feed off my shackles. I don't know, it's almost my, I was about to say this is my declaration of faith, but that would be, I think that's probably me undermining my whole case. As I'm apt to do, I'll give a long, detailed argument about something, then I make an aside, and then I think about it later, I'm like, darn, why did I say that? It didn't help me. That hurt my case. Now someone's gonna realize that, oh no. Anyway, I, as I said, have never claimed to be consistent. I am proudly inconsistent. Not even that good of a philosopher. I'm not really a philosopher at all, although aspiring philosopher perhaps. Amateur philosopher, wannabe philosopher, I think I say on my socials. On that note, take care.